Um, I want to do something a little bit different today. Normally, I've been doing these interview videos, but I wanted to start doing a lecture series. And the lecture series is going to be other people teaching just like one off, two off, sort of half-hour long lectures on how to do art and design things. So this is a little different from that. But I came across this project that I started and finished in grad school, not last year, but the year before. And it's actually the underpinnings of the Free Art and Design School. And at the time, I didn't have like a clear epiphany vision of what I wanted the Free Art and Design School to be. It didn't even have that name. But I knew that I wanted education, arts education, to be a little different in the future. Not in a utopian way, but in a kind of practical way. But I didn't see how a lot of those things could be done within already existing schools, which is ultimately why I've created this project. But I thought it was cool that I found this. So I'm actually just going to read the essay. The project was from a design writing project where we were supposed to like write an essay or article and then design it. I think I actually did a terrible job designing it, but the writing is pretty good. So I'm just going to read the whole thing. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. So it's called Deconstructing Design, and it's from the Design Education Circle, which is what I thought I would make when I graduated, was like this loose community, which has now become the Free Art and Design School. And this is like I'm not going to show every page, but like the theme was like puzzle pieces throughout. Deconstructing Design Toward a Student-Centered Design Philosophy is the name of the piece. And it's just kind of what my views were on design. So I'll start. At its most basic, the term radical means roots. It is a term definitionally rooted in the history and depth of a topic. To be radical is usually seen as a way forward, but it is always a way back, a way towards truth, a way towards understanding, and a way towards some kind of wholeness. When thinking of the structure of roots, two terms come to mind, one being network and the other being radial. With Deleuze and Guattari's conception of the rhizome, we can come to see a root network as useful in imagining how people can relate to one another and how we can describe systems of knowledge. We can also think of networks and radial connections as involving circularity and equality, two ideals that will be useful in our understanding of how to create a radical approach to design. It's a bit theoretical. Design and design education both have lofty goals. Both fields wish to be contemporary, new, exciting, and thought-provoking. The inherent values of the design field, those regarding making new things, grabbing attention, and creating a system of visual norms and cultural content, can at their best be described as radical. We look back to the history of design to work inside and outside the canon for inspiration. We see the best pieces of design, those considered ahead of their time or definitional of the period, and learn from their composition and energy. Design students study the past, eagerly consume the present, and dream of and create the future. In its most ideal state, the field of design is at the cutting edge of culture and helps usher us towards a more inclusive, more energetic, more diverse, and more experimental future, ideally. To get toward a future of good design, we need to have good design education. That does not mean everyone going to a top design program at a top art school, whatever that might mean. And it doesn't mean making fresh and contemporary work or making a lot of money at one of the new flashy tech companies or advertising firms. It means something deeper, something longer lasting, and something more values-driven. There are a handful of principles that an ideal design education system should include. If I were to create my own curriculum, class, life philosophy for design education, it would look something like the following. So the first is set and setting. Oh well. Also, you can tell I was not great at school. Our printers didn't double print, like, for whatever reason, and so all of these are like extra pages. Set and setting is a term usually used to describe how to ensure you have a good LSD trip. It means creating an atmosphere and surrounding group of people who will calm you, nurture you, and ensure you do not spiral out of control. A good art class needs the same sort of thing, contrary to some popular thought. The ideal classroom does not need to be without strong critique, but it does need to foster a healthy environment of thought and communication. The classroom should be a space where free and open thought and discussion are paramount. Students should flood the classroom with thoughts about other fields. Design about design is not the most interesting except to designers. Design about medicine, sports, nature, history, and shoes is much more visually interesting and ripe for experimental thinking. The most interesting work is always created at the intersection of two or more fields. Design should be no different. When students are allowed to make work about the things they are most interested in and passionate about, rather than being guided to work on something they have to pull at, the work comes more freely and usually looks more exciting. "I can tell you had fun making this" is one of the most telling critical remarks someone can make. And indeed, having fun and playing are crucial to continuing to be happy in design. Students should be asked what kind of projects they want to work on and what kind of critiques would be helpful to them. This doesn't mean that assignments shouldn't be fun and challenging, it just means that there should be an equality to the classroom. This equality in an ideal setting is one that is rhizomal. There is no hierarchy, everyone has an equal part to play in the classroom. A teacher should be more like a leader or a shepherd at the absolute most. The more ideal system would be to have no teacher-student hierarchy. Everyone should be learning equally from one another. Another element of the setting should be a physical consideration. Design doesn't and shouldn't just live in a computer. A design class should take as much of it as it can from every place offered and not offered to it. Students should be ushered outside the classroom to collect elements from the hallways and the parking lot and the fields and any other surrounding area surrounding the classroom to use as compositional elements and inspiration. The more a student is forced to engage with the world and learn to see how nature designs things from leaves to clouds, the more flexible their work will be. Moving away from the easy contemporary shortcuts of digital tools and back to rigorous art practices should be an option, but one that is also useful. Designers don't need to know how to draw, and that is a norm that should be challenged. Whatever is created should be created with energy, creativity, and fun. Design is better when it takes into account different viewpoints, whether they be literal perspectives of an object or competing philosophical claims. When you're too far deep into something to see what you're working on, take a step back, examine it through a different lens, and shuffle your thinking. So this is the second part, which is called Design Unthinking, a riff on design thinking, which is a common phrase in the design community. As with most manifestos, this one takes issue with a cultural norm of the day, namely that there is too close a tie between design and advertising. Last year, I saw a political advertisement for a California proposition that was designed in a hippie psychedelic style that appeals to me. It wasn't until I looked into what the poster was advertising that I realized a major corporation had paid for the design of these ads to appeal to young voters like I am, and that the bill went against workers' rights in favor of company control. Something like that takes a step of research and understanding to tie apart the signified meaning of the design style and the actual meaning of the political agenda. While it's a belief of the author, me, that in an ideal world everyone would be educated in design and propaganda and psychology, that is all outside the scope of this article. What can be advocated here in this short space is the idea that we all think a little more critically about the design of the media we consume, not just the media itself. When you take a typography class, suddenly you see fonts everywhere, and you can see when something is used intentionally and when something was used somewhat randomly, and how both of those decisions have an impact on how a piece of design is read. Suddenly, you cannot unsee type. As designers, we have a responsibility to think really critically about the design choices we make. Does using blackletter or DIN elicit thoughts of Nazi Germany to the public? Probably not. But there are instances where using certain design elements or fonts or tropes will be evident to audiences consciously or subconsciously. We, as shapers of culture and visual commerce, need to be aware of this on a minute level, and design education should absolutely have classes in semiotics and psychology to help designers understand the full weight of their power and control. At every turn, there is design. You wake up and check your phone. Every font and color and contrast has been determined by designers. The logo of the app you use, its interface, the number of words on the screen has all been determined. You get out of bed and walk into the shower. The words and fonts on the shower dial help you know the affordances of the lever and how to use the shower. The label on your toothpaste was created to give you a sensation of cleanliness and freshness. You get in your car. The dashboard was designed to clearly let you know everything important. A bright red flashing light means danger. Something is wrong. A green full fuel bar means you're set to go. Every sign on the road has fonts that are as clear to see during the day, at night, and at a distance as possible. The counters in the lowercase e's and a's are large and visible. The numbers are clear and distinct. In an ideal world, everything is designed so that even if you can't read the language, you still know where to go and what to do. The symbiosis between you as a viewer and consumer of culture being indoctrinated into a world of design from preschool, learning maps and green means go, red means stop, combined with the effort of the designer, help to make the world go round, literally. If I go to Sweden, I can get around. Is that true vice versa? What I am talking about is accessibility, which brings us to our third point. Accessibility and diversity. Entire books can and have been written about accessibility and diversity, but I combine them here because I think they rely upon each other in the world of design. And in an ideal design system or form of design education needs to include both in order to make good design. Good design is accessible. Good design takes into consideration a diverse network of influences. This might not always be considered true in the past due to various barriers and boundaries of who determined what good design was, but I argue that not only are these points true now, but even if they've always been true, they have always been true even if they were against popular thought. Art is about making stuff. Design is about making organized stuff. At its most fundamental, a majority of design is making something visual in an ordered way. That order may also be disorder, but the point stands that design is creating something consisting of zero more elements, and those elements have a relationship to each other, even if that relationship is not apparent or chaotic. Zero elements may imply speculative design where the topic discussed is entirely mental, and even then, thoughts can be considered elements, I'd argue. When all thoughts and elements of design come from a monolithic group of people or culture, the work might only change over time, but having different individuals with different backgrounds and experiences equally represented and active in the design process allows for more axes of change and development. It's beyond apparent at this point that having diversity is not only important to humans creating work, but also to the quality and energy of the work itself. The whole point of art school is to learn something new about how to make art. I argue that you cannot do that most effectively unless many voices make up the chorus. One tone repeated is monotonous. Many tones together make a chord, and whether discordant or pleasant, that complexity makes for more developed and deeper, more complex design. Life is too short for simplicity in the fields of art and design. Experimentation, chaos, play, loudness, and contrast are where design blooms. We need fertile soil to produce a diverse flora. This goes both ways. We need diverse voices to make good work, but we also need ample support and kindness to allow that diversity to be on equal footing. And this was an illustration I did saying that, like, if you only have pieces that look the same, you'll never complete the full puzzle, and you need all these different pieces to make a full puzzle. And my teacher thought no one would get that, and that was dumb. Anyways. Diversity gives way to accessibility. I have migraines that make staring at screens all day difficult. Because of this, I make work explaining migraines to people and share information online about migraines. Someone who is experiencing migraines for the first time can see my work, understand migraines better, and not feel so alone. I can also work towards making tools that one day might make migraines less severe for people, such as dimmer switches on websites, or warning, or for flashing content, or even an ad blocker like plugin that doesn't allow certain kinds of flashing or bright content to be shown. This is just one example of how invention comes from people experiencing life difficultly or differently. The man who invented latex gloves did so for his wife, who is a nurse. Rihanna created a line of beauty industry-changing makeup for skin tones typically not catered to in the beauty market. Problem solving is usually an element of design that is brought up when people ask about the benefits of the field of design, as if any field needs to assert itself to a utilitarian audience. That being said, design does carry with it the power to help, to inform, and to educate people. It's just up to the designers to do that. And then this is design for good. When people ask me why I went into design, I usually tell them it's because I can put together my philosophical thinking skills with my artistic ones. I love making things, and specifically making beautiful things. I also love philosophy, but feel to be lacking when the only things I can make and do with philosophical thinking feel to be writing books, and no one may ever read them. My challenge I offer to the design community is not an easy one. Don't sell out. Don't take the easy route. Question the background and ethics of every client, every project, every buyer. Try your very hardest to make work that changes the world in a good way, that educates someone or is simply beautiful and not wasteful. These are ideals, and often design and even art get so wrapped up in commercial success or merely the ability to put food on the table, but it's good to have goals. Design is something that doesn't need to be taught at a school. Design can be learned from YouTube videos, from books, from word of mouth, from personal internal intuition. In an ideal world, design software is free, laptops are free, the internet is free. Everyone is a designer, and people are only making work that is helpful or good for the world, whatever that means. In an ideal world, there's no internet, no digital design. We all live in eco-friendly huts that don't use electricity, and there are no carbon-spewing cars. The only design is interior and fashion design, and there's no pollution, no war, no death. But given the world that we live in, the choices that have been made, and the state of the world, we continue to design, and design acts as one of the few fields that can truly be radical. Design is already decentralized. You don't need to pass the bar like in law to be a designer. You don't need to go to medical school. You just need to have a pencil and a piece of paper. We are already afforded so many freedoms and so much flexibility in the field, and arguably the most important thing is to keep it that way, to push it further in that direction, to make design education as open and accessible and free in every sense of the word as possible. Aside from removing gatekeeping as to what good design and good aesthetics are, the main task of design in this century is to ensure that it doesn't get engulfed by tech or one of the other various powerful fields and can remain its own independent field of thought and practice for as long as possible. Designers need to help other designers. There's so much human about our seemingly technical and clinical field, and we need to foster that creativity or risk stagnation. Diversity of style, value, aesthetic, and content of work is absolutely key, and even that in and of itself is good enough starting point towards designing for good or designing for social impact. Designers too need to know when to stop and take a step back and consider that they might not know all of the answers and might know less about a product or book or system they are creating than someone else in the audience for that product or object. Humility, openness, and flexibility are more important than precision, newness, or even hard work when it comes to learning how to create something, and ultimately creating something that matters. We must change the value structure of design education if we ever hope to make design equitable, equal, engaging, and up to the standards that we will set for the future of the field itself. And that's it. At the end, I say, DEC, the Design Education Circle, is a group of design-minded individuals coming together to create better principles for design and design education. Deconstructing Design is the first publication from DEC and sets the precedent for some of the founding values and ideas of the group. We are open to all collaborations and ideas. And I think somewhere I wrote, yeah, I made this in December of 2022. So I guess that was, no, I didn't do that last year. I think it's December of 2021, but maybe not. Oh, interesting. Oh no, it's from April of 2022. But anyways, the point is, I don't fully agree with some of the things that I wrote in this. I think I agree at heart with a lot of the sentiment, and I think growing up is a balance of navigating your emotions about a situation that you're in or a system that you live within, and then also trying to figure out how to productively interact with that system and the people around you. And I think the way in which I've developed the Free Art and Design School, away from some of the rhetoric in here that might be divisive, has been useful, not to tampen down my viewpoints or my strong opinions, but to, instead of talking about Deleuze and Guattari necessarily, to like use that as background information and then have more like accessible or approachable content. So I think it's interesting going back and reading something that I wrote a while ago and seeing how my ideas on these things have blossomed over time. There was also something I wrote that I'll not read from 3 or more years ago called the Synergist Manifesto, when I was writing about collectively doing work while being separated by COVID. So I think it's cool to see how these thoughts have like bloomed over time and what I would write now versus a year ago, 3 years ago, and 10 years in the future. So these are some of the ideas that founded, in my mind, a need for something like the Free Art and Design School, and I'm glad I found it.